Welcome to Goodknits. As the name suggests, we're here to chat all things knitting. I'm Sari, and I am a Canadian expat that has been living in Amsterdam with my husband for the last 7 years. Fall knitting is back, and I am feeling super inspired right now by all the beautiful patterns out there that I'm seeing. And I've been giving a lot of thought to the types of garments that I'm missing in my wardrobe, and just also what I actually enjoy knitting and want to spend my time on, since of course there's not unlimited hours for knitting, so you should also enjoy the process. So today I'm going to take you through the 3 types of garments that I am really excited to have in my wardrobe and that I'm hoping to knit this season. Not that I'll ever get to all of these, because of course my plans are always bigger than the skill that I have and the speed that I can knit at. So this is my 5th seasonal knitting plans video, and I have noticed a bit of a trend that I have, which is I always seem to have one season where I have all the yarn, my plans are pretty concrete, it's usually a very short list, like 6 items or so that I actually think I can get to. And then the next season I seem to have none of the yarn, I end up with 20-30 patterns that I'm interested in making, and of course I never get to them, but it's more dreaming about what I would actually like to see. And so this is going to be the latter kind of video. I don't really have the majority of the yarn for any of these projects, so I can kind of dream big and then decide on the fly what I actually want to buy yarn for and cast on for myself. So that's also why in this video you're going to see much broader ideas of plans and the types of items that I want to make. But I'm also really curious to know from you which ones you think, suit me best, maybe help point me in the right direction. And also, if you happen to know of patterns that fit these kind of 3 buckets that I'm going to go through, and I haven't mentioned them here today, please send those over, because I'm always looking for new patterns, and maybe there will be something out there that's actually a better fit, and I just don't know about it yet. I also still have quite a lot of my needles from my summer knitting, though I would say it's my summer knitting that was already veering into fall. I'm not going to go into detail here because I've already talked about those in podcast episodes. You know that I'm working on them. It includes my Braidy loop cardigan by Other Loops, my fancy Pepita skirt by Anne-Catherine Stoll, and my Michaela sweater by Moreca Knits. But I'm actually almost done that. So I expect kind of before fall officially starts on, what is it, September 21st, I am hoping to actually be done that. I just probably need more yarn. In preparing for this video, I really tried to consider what items don't I have in my wardrobe, but I wish I did. What do I wish I could be reaching for more and that I would actually want to make? So I've really considered, what can I easily buy? So what am I not really seeing in stores at an affordable price? And which items do I maybe just want to buy for this season so that I have them and focus more on knitting the garments that I will also probably enjoy the process of. So in this case, it might be I buy more of the really basic sweaters and cardigans that are just easy throw on garments and not that expensive, whereas I'll invest the time in knitting the more complex pieces that I find are maybe a bit unaffordable in retail, or I just know I'm going to enjoy. To help me collect my thoughts for these types of videos, typically I would just write on my iPad with a pen, handwritten notes, and kind of jot down things as I'm thinking about them. However, I'm starting to find that that's not really the most structured and organized way for me to get an idea across. So in an effort to become more organized and structured, I'm partnering with Skillshare to take a class on Notion for how I can better prepare my content here on YouTube as a creator. If you don't know, Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives with thousands of classes led by industry experts. If there's a topic or skill you want to learn, chances are you can find it on Skillshare. They have everything from film and illustration, photography and graphic design, through to productivity and starting your own business. And for the fall, they've recently added 3 new class topics, including creative careers, creative inspiration, and AI and innovation. I've actually personally been a member of Skillshare since starting this YouTube channel last year. So I took the class, The Complete Guide to iMovie with Ali Bartlett. And Skillshare classes are perfect for me. I learn by doing, so the practice projects give me a way to test my new skills immediately and get feedback. If you're like me and you love to learn, the first 500 people to use the link in my description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so get started today. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead and get into the 3 categories of garment that I'm excited to knit this season. So the first category today is skirts and dresses. And if you've been here for any length of time, you will probably know that I am really having a moment with skirts and dresses. So I have done 2 pattern roundup videos, one for fall and winter, one for spring and summer. I've knit myself a dress, so this summer or spring, I guess, I knit myself the Milady's dress by Goodknits. And at the moment on my needles, I have the Fancy Pepita skirt by Anne Catherine Stoll. So this is an item that I just really love. I think you can't go wrong with a knitted skirt or a dress. In general, I think, I have fairly long legs. It's a part of my body that I like to accentuate a bit more, and I find when I wear, especially, more above the knee skirts, I just tend to feel really good about myself. So it's an item that gives me a lot of confidence, and therefore it's something that I reach for a lot. And all the garments that I have, whether those are store-bought dresses or skirts, I wear a lot in fall and winter. And so it just makes sense for me to make more of those for myself. And I actually have never really had a knitted garment of either of those, even though every season I look at them in retail and I really love them, but I don't buy them. And I think for some reason I just can't justify the cost. So this year I want to change that, and I really want to make something. So the first item that I have is actually a sweater pattern, but that I would like to turn into a dress. And that is the Bruno Sweater by Moreca Knit. And I actually got inspiration to knit this because I was browsing on the Cezanne website a couple weeks ago, and I saw this beautiful dress pattern, which was only available in dark gray, and it was 150 euros. I personally don't really want a dark gray dress. I don't think it really fits within my color palette that I'm knitting to, which is true autumn. And in general, I just didn't want to spend 150 euros on it when I figured I could probably just make it for myself. And then I would have the freedom to knit it in whichever color I wanted. At first, I couldn't really find any good pictures of this dress on the website to show what the shoulder detail looked like, but I noticed that they did release a few extra colors in the last week or so. And I can tell now that the dress from Cezanne is actually a drop shoulder, but I am noticing I don't particularly love the look of drop shoulders on me. I think they're okay, and I will definitely knit more. But if I have a choice, I think I much prefer something that has more of a set-in sleeve or saddle shoulder design, so that it really cuts this area and doesn't sit further down on my arm. So I have decided the Bruno sweater pattern is not necessarily an exact duplicate, but it really fits the overall style that I'm going for, and it has about 15 centimeters of positive ease, which I think will be just the right amount for me so that it's not hanging off of me, but it's also not so tight that I feel uncomfortable in areas that maybe I don't want to accentuate as much, like my midsection. Originally, I was thinking of using the Filcolana, Alva, and Tilia yarns held together, but as I was looking at the pattern more, I realized I do need probably a true fingering weight held with a mohair to hit the DK weight that is called for in this pattern. So I am actually not sure what yarn I'm going to use, and I would love your feedback. This is a pattern that I am for sure going to cast on this season, and I'd actually like to do it sooner rather than later. So I'm thinking cashmere seems a bit too expensive, especially because I'm not sure I'm going to be 100% happy with the fit of this, since I'm turning a sweater into a dress for the very first time. I've never done that before. So I'm thinking I want to stick more to an alpaca yarn. I think that is going to be much closer than in price to the retail version of this dress. I would like to keep it ideally around 100 and under. So I was thinking maybe the Drops alpaca yarn, or maybe the Essayer alpaca. I think it's the 1 or 2 held with a mohair. I need to do more research on this because yeah, my original plan is kind of out the window now. If you have a suggestion for essentially an alpaca held with a mohair, or maybe there's a different combination that you think would work well together, I do think the mohair in this case could help to just sort of fill out the density of the fabric and make it feel really nice on the body. But I'm not really married to any specific direction on this right now, and I could really use some inspiration so that I can get started. So let me know what you're thinking would work best for this to hit that DK weight. The next pattern that I have is the staple skirt by Jeanette Godreau, or New Wave Knitting. And I've had this on my list for a while. I think it actually showed up in one of my pattern roundup videos. I think actually maybe both. I really like this pattern because it can actually be knit with any weight of yarn. You can make modifications to add a slit. You can make it longer, shorter. Not that you can't do that with all patterns, but from what I understand of this pattern, she does actually take you through what you would need to do to make those modifications, and it sounds like there is a calculator so that you knit your gauge swatch, you make sure that you're happy with it, you plug in your numbers, and then it will tell you how many stitches you need to cast on and how that modifies the pattern overall. So I think this is something that she is kind of being known for now, which is having these items that can be really tailored and customized to your gauge, your size, and the modifications that you want to make. And I've never made one of her patterns, but I am really curious to make this one. And it actually came up again for me because I was watching The Traitors season 2, and Parvati had this really beautiful green matching set of a mini skirt and a knitted t-shirt with more of a balloon sleeve. And I was like, oh, that's so cute. I really want one of those. And when I looked it up, I actually found out that it was just a mango set. So the stylist from the show had just dressed her in mango. It was actually a really affordable set, but I am watching Traitors, the US version, way behind everybody else. So I'm quite behind, and that set is long gone because it was from last season. So I was trying to find a skirt pattern that would be a close dupe to that mango one, and I'm thinking this is a good option. I don't think I'm gonna make it with mohair. I think I'll just stick to probably a DK weight. I'm not 100% sure on the yarn. Maybe I'll keep this a little bit less expensive and go with a drops. Or my best friend is actually coming in October, so maybe this is a good moment for me to actually order knit picks and ship it to her, because it's really, I think, almost impossible to get here, and have her bring me some knit picks yarn to try. So I'm not really sure what I'm going to do there yet, but I really like the kind of simple A-line fit of this skirt, and I would really like to try to knit this type of pattern. I was originally going to make this a matching set like the version Parvati wore, but I've realized I don't really have a place for short sleeve, like mohair merino tops in my wardrobe. I do have one that I knit, which is the Una top or shirt by Irene Lynn, and I feel like no matter what season we're in, I rarely have a purpose to wear that. I tend to run really, really cold, and so I want my arms covered, and I don't have enough cardigans to throw a cardigan on over top, and I don't know if I want to be pairing all these different knits together. So yeah, I think if I'm being realistic, a short sleeve, warm or cold weather top is probably not something that's going to work in my wardrobe, in my lifestyle. So I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to do the skirt, and then maybe I'll make it in a color where I can easily find a long sleeve shirt that I can just pair with it and have them look pretty close together. So I'm thinking I might actually make this skirt in a burgundy color or maybe a forest green. I actually just bought a forest green long sleeve shirt, so then if I can get those colors quite close, probably bottle green actually would work pretty well, then maybe I could pair those two items together. And maybe then it would look a little bit more like a dress too, which could be cute. And then the final pattern in this category is the Gerda skirt by Aegyoknit. And again, I'm taking inspiration from a retail piece on this. So this came up in my first pattern roundup video last fall, and I was talking about this Samso set that I was interested in specifically for the skirt and the sweater together, but it would have been, I think, 250 euros paired together, and it never really went on sale. So I kind of put it aside, forgot about it, but I do still think about that skirt a lot. And so when I saw this come across, I noticed it is a matching sweater and skirt, but it's such a complicated, big cable kind of project that I don't realistically see myself, at least this season, knitting the sweater to go with it. So I think I'm going to start with the skirt, see how I like the pattern. I really, really like the design of it, and so if I get a lot of use out of it, if I enjoy it, then maybe in a future season I'll go ahead and knit the matching sweater. But I think it's fine to kind of just have the one piece and wear it with other items. So that's a piece that I'm really excited for. I'm not sure how realistic it is to get to it this year, but it is definitely on my mind, and since I'm still thinking about that Samso set, I think that's a good sign that having this type of item would be quite useful for me. Moving on to category 2, and that is going to be warm layers, and that has been, I would say, a pretty big theme in the last few seasonal planning videos. I really am lacking layering pieces in my wardrobe. I don't really buy cardigans and that in retail, and I also don't make a lot of them. So last year was the first cardigan I ever made, which is my Cardi Jumper by Goodknits. Then I also made the cardigan number 4 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, or I started it way before but finished it after the other one. But they're both very similar colors, and now even my Braidy loop cardigan I have somehow made in a very similar color palette. So I want to make more warm layers, but I also want to make them in a more diverse color palette, let's say. So this, I would say, is a category overall that's just really high on my list to continue knitting all year round, because I think that I will get a lot of use out of these pieces. And the first one on my list is the Ppoppo jacket by Aegyoknit. I feel like you are all going to be sick of hearing about this project because I have talked about it a lot in, I think, the last 2 seasonal plan videos. I've also talked a lot about it in podcasts because this is one of the few projects where I do actually have the yarn. So I'm going to be using the Lana Gato VIP in this beautiful rosy color. And then I had a big mohair saga where I bought the Gepard Kitsetta in more of a flame orange color. When I bought this, I wasn't happy with how they were pairing together. It was just too orange for my liking for a jacket. So then I bought the Filcolana Tilia in Antique Rose, which also, it just ended up being so much lighter than this, which I couldn't really gauge from the pictures online. So that's now becoming my Michaela sweater. And then third go, I decided to order the Assayer mohair in, what color is this? 69. And these are much, much closer together. I'm very happy with these. So I'm finally ready to cast this on. I'm going to do a new gauge swatch because my gauge was definitely off the first time that I attempted that swatch. And I just want to make sure that I'm happy with the 2 colors together. So this piece is finally going to happen, I promise. You will not hear about it again in a future seasonal knitting plans video. So I have the yarn, we're finally ready to go. I also am really trying to focus on, when it comes to warm layers, I want to make the pieces that are a bit more textured and unique and complex, because I think it also gives me something to keep my brain active and learn new skills. And so the next item on my list is the Book Club cardigan by Sari Nordlund, and this is having such a moment right now in the community. I feel like almost everybody is knitting this cardigan, which rightfully so. It's gorgeous, it's super unique. I really like that it's more of a V-neck style because I feel like a lot of cardigans tend to sit higher and be more crew neck. I don't personally love that in a cardigan because I don't find it as versatile for me. So when I saw this cardigan, I immediately saved it for myself. What I will say though is, as I look at it and consider it more, I'm starting to wonder if it will actually be something that I reach for. I think I'm really drawn to it because I am very excited about the process part of it. I really want to knit this type of piece because I've never done it before and challenge myself to take on that. But when I really think about this kind of chunkier weight, and let me see actually, yeah, so it's a worsted weight cardigan, which is heavier, I think, than maybe I need here in Amsterdam. So you can tell in the pictures, it is quite a chunky knit, and then you also have the cables on top of it. I am just trying to take a more critical eye towards this piece to really think through if it's something that I want, or do I just really enjoy seeing it and enjoy the idea of it. I'd be curious to know your thoughts. Have you made this piece? Are you actually wearing it? Do you enjoy it? Did you actually like the process of knitting it? Because yeah, I think it's definitely an investment in a lot of yarn, but also a lot of time to make it. And I just want to make sure I'm actually going to be happy with it. So it's one of those pieces where as I see it more and more and I give it more thought, I'm starting to kind of change my mind on it, but it's still very much on my list and something that I am considering. I also feel like for a lot of the items in this specific category, they're for the most part pieces that you've seen in all my past videos, whether that's seasonal plans or pattern roundups. And I think that's a good sign because it means at least that I'm still thinking of these. I still think that they have a place in my wardrobe, and my tastes have been fairly consistent. So at least I'm not kind of, oh, I'm over here, now I'm over there. I seem to kind of be sticking with the same pieces as the months go on. And, you know, maybe other than the book club cardigan, for the most part, everything else, I'm still like, yeah, I really want that. Hopefully if I knit it, it's going to be something that I actually wear. The next item in this category is the Agnete cardigan by PetiteKnit, and I've talked about this before. I really like the look of this. I think also in retail, I tend to gravitate towards more brioche knit sweaters, but also cardigans, and it's something that I have considered buying, but then every time I think that I'll buy it, I'm like, oh, I could just make that for myself. Why don't I just make it? I was saying with the book club cardigan, I'm drawn to it because it also looks challenging and it's something that I would have to put some thought into. Maybe the middle ground here is brioche stitch, which is really complicated. The only thing I've ever made in brioche is a fluffy crop top by Leica Lee, and that didn't go that well. I had 3 false starts and then ended up messing up my join. So there's so many mistakes in that piece that I did, and it's just a tiny, tiny little garment. It's been a couple of years now. I think my skills have come a long way. I know brioche stitch isn't as intimidating as I think it is, but just the idea of making a whole cardigan seems really daunting. But I think this is the type of cardigan that I would get a lot of wear out. It's a little bit more cropped. It just has a nice look to it, and I think it will really dress up skirts, dresses, a basic, you know, t-shirt, jeans kind of outfit. So I think it has a real place in my wardrobe for me. And then final items in this category are kind of one and the same, but I'm just trying to decide which style I want to go with. So I would really like a heavier, cozy throw-on garment that I can wear in much colder weather, especially if we go home to Canada in the winter. I have already been thinking for many, many years that I want the zipper sweater light, which is that quarter zip by PetiteKnit. I like the light version because it's just DK weight. It's not paired with mohair, so I think also I could get away with making this quite inexpensively for myself, maybe in the Tilia or the Filcolana Peruvian Highland wool, Sadness Peer Gynt, or maybe a drops yarn, which is really going to bring the cost down. So I also think this would help me because it would show me how to put in a zipper, which just seems really scary for some reason. I know lots of people have said it's not really that bad and you can do it quite simply, but I've never done it before. So that would be a new skill for me to add to my repertoire. And yeah, I think if I've been thinking about this for years now, maybe it's time to just finally bite the bullet and make it. I think it's also nice because it's just stockinette, so I think once you get through that top collar part where you have the quarter zip to place, it would be a pretty easy knit that I could do quite quickly. So there's that piece. And then the other one that I'm thinking of actually is just being released right now. I think by the time I get this up, you will be able to buy it. And that's the Port Jacket by Ozetta. I had in the past been thinking about the Miles jacket, also by Ozetta, but there's just something about the oversizedness of that I am kind of questioning for myself. So I keep putting it aside and I'm like, I don't know. And then when I saw the Port Jacket, I really felt like that could be a nice alternative. It's a more cropped fit. There's not as much going on in terms of the hemline. Do I know what wool it's in? Oh, it's a worsted weight, so it's going to be quite heavy, but I think because it really is more of a jacket, that could be a really nice layering piece to actually use as a jacket in the transition season, so early fall and then going into spring. I think that could actually be perfect in Amsterdam where it doesn't get extremely cold, so just being able to put something on that would go with most items would be really nice. Typically, I don't really gravitate to this style of item. I think especially with these buttons, it isn't something that speaks to me, but when I saw this, I really had a positive response. So let me know what you think. I think a ton of people have made the PetiteKnit zipper sweater. So if that's something you've made, do you wear it? Do you regret it? I feel like I see a lot of podcasters talk about them like, okay, I made it, and then you don't really see it come up again. I'm just curious if that's actually something you've gotten a lot of use out of, if it's worth the effort, or maybe I would actually get more wear and versatility out of something like an actual jacket that's heavier than a cardigan, but really good in climates where it doesn't get extremely cold. Third category of garments is sweaters with special details. This is probably the lowest priority category for me this season. You see how much I have on my list in the first two. Realistically, there's no way I'm going to be able to knit all of this in the fall. Maybe I'll get to one, or I'll start something closer to winter, and I probably will always have some kind of stockinette sweater on my needles, but I don't necessarily have a specific just plain stockinette sweater that I'm thinking of. What I'd really like in my wardrobe is items that actually have really kind of unique, special, polished details. Something that I've realized looking back at my wear test videos that I've been doing, and just in general when I review my knits, I like when something is a little bit unique, but also just has a classic fit. So my Sonia tee, for example, with the pearl bump, with the twisted rib. I think the Braidy loop cardigan that I'm working on, where for the most part it's just a basic cardigan, but then has that one or two cables along the sleeve and along the back. Yeah, I think there's all these little pieces where I just like when something is a little bit special. The first pattern on the list is actually the Braidy loop sweater by Other Loops. So I just said I have the cardigan version of this on my needles. I'm really enjoying making it. I am struggling a little bit with the Other Loops pattern writing style, but I'm also just enjoying learning kind of how she writes. And I think I've decided that I have the yarn for this, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm a little bit worried it might be too dark and overpower the pattern. This New Zealand yarn, which is the Zilana Kari fingering weight, and it is in this beautiful K15 blue awa shade. And I just really wanted to find something special for this yarn. And I knew I kind of wanted to do a fairly basic sweater, but not really boring and plain. So the more I think about it, the more I think maybe the Braidy loop sweater will be a nice fit. I'll buy a mohair to pair this with. And actually I should double check that this is actually in the right weight. Yeah, so mohair and a fingering held together for DK. So I think that this could work. I would need to double check the meterage to see if I would have enough, because there is quite a lot of texture going on in this sweater. But that is what I'm thinking. Do you think this yarn would work well, or is it going to be too dark? So there's that one, and I know 100% that that is a sweater that if I don't make it this season, it's definitely high on my list, and I will make it probably in winter because I just love the look of it. I think I wouldn't mind knitting another sweater with this kind of cable detail, especially because the sweater version has also the big ribbing, which I think looks really nice. Then I also have another other loop sweater on the list that I had actually been planning for, I think last winter, and had originally bought yarn for, and that is the soft loop sweater. I still really love the look of this. The sweater number 8 by My Favorite Things Knitwear is to this day still one of my most worn sweaters, and I wanted to find something that was a very similar fit but a different pattern in general, and so I really like the texture of this. So I had originally bought the Gepard Garn Wild and Soft and the Drops Brushed Alpaca to pair together. I did a swatch. It was too brown. It was much too close to the sweater number 8 color that I had. So I originally said, okay, I'll find a different mohair, but keep the Wild and Soft similar. So I was just going to get a lighter color mohair to pair it with. And then I really wanted to have a cast on for a trip last spring, or I guess this spring when we were going to France. And so I decided to use that Wild and Soft for the Sonia tee so that I could cast that on. And I'm really glad I did, because it ended up being a perfect lightweight yarn to use for spring and summer knitting. I'm really happy with it. But now that means I don't have any of the yarn for this, because also the brushed alpaca I ended up using in the Berlin scarf that I still have to finish, so that needs to come out of hibernation. So I have a completely clean slate for this one. I need to kind of go back to the drawing board and see what is going to work best in terms of gauge. Part of what deterred me from going with the fingering plus 2 mohairs held together is just the sheer cost of this piece. I'm not sure I want to spend that amount of money on this specific sweater. So I need to kind of think through how I want to approach that. Maybe I get the Drops mohair to bring the cost down. I also think I do want to make it in more of this creamy color that the pattern has. I think that's actually something that I could use a bit more of in my wardrobe. I am not totally decided yet how I'm going to handle the yarn on this one to bring the costs down. I could just try to do it with the fingering plus mohair and just be a bit off gauge. It is an oversized sweater, but I also don't want it to be too loose of a gauge, because I don't think it will really hold the pattern as well then. So I think there needs to be some level of density to this. But definitely when I swatched with the brushed alpaca as well, even if the color had been right, I didn't love the look of the brushed alpaca with the fingering. So that's definitely not going to work. I do think I want to stick to mohair specifically, or maybe I do a fingering plus like an Essayer alpaca one, or the Knitting for Olive cashmere lace. Maybe that would be nice together, but also again, driving the cost up. I think both of those are quite pricey, especially the cashmere. So still lots to sort through to do that pattern, but again, it's still on my mind. It's still something that I'd really like to have. So I think those 2 other loop patterns are very high on my list for the rest of this year. Then I have a sweater I've never talked about before, which is the Chantal sweater by Moreca Knits. Moreca Knit. And in general, I'm just really gravitating towards her patterns. I think the Michaela sweater I'm working on is really well written. I'm enjoying that process. I think she has a very clear way of writing, and then she also just has a really classic style that I think suits me very, very well. So I like almost everything that she's put out and would really like to explore more of her patterns. I think if I enjoy making the Bruno sweater into a dress, then maybe the Chantal sweater will end up on my list. It is a sport weight, and it says it is slip stitch, which I don't think I've ever worked before, but I really like the texture that it's creating. I also like that the sleeves don't seem to have a ton of decreases in them, so for the most part they just go straight down, and I think it just looks like a really cozy, casual sweater that would be easy to throw on. That's something that I am missing. I also like the collar is a bit thicker and high without actually being a mock neck or a turtleneck. As much as I want kind of turtlenecks in my wardrobe, I feel like they're a little bit too much for the climate that we have, and so yeah, maybe that's a good compromise, having kind of a 2x2 chunky collar that is still more of a crew neck style. So that is the Chantal sweater, and then the next one I have is something that's shown up in a pattern roundup video before, and that is the Swirl sweater by TwinKnits. These are designers, clearly twins, that I think have some really nice patterns. They're definitely more focused towards cables, which I don't knit a lot of. But this one specifically I like because the cable is just really more down the front. So with some of the other patterns that they have, the cable is more all over, and you also are doing stuff on the sleeves. I like with this specific one, the sleeves are quite plain. Everything is kind of kept to the front and back panels. I would maybe even just go ahead and omit the big cable lattice down the back and just try to keep that simple with stockinette and maybe just focus on the front pattern. It is a little bit like the Moby sweater from PetiteKnit, which I used to be really interested in knitting. That really fell off my radar a lot, but this is a lighter version, I think, of that. It is just, well, 3 lace weight yarns held together, which also would get very, very expensive. But I think in general, just mohair sweaters are a little bit easier to wear because they're very lightweight on your body and also kind of enjoyable to knit. So this might be a bit too ambitious for this year. I don't know if I will actually get to this, but it is a pattern that keeps coming up in my mind. Every time I come across it on my Ravelry, I'm like, oh yeah, right, I really like that one, and maybe I should finally consider knitting it. And I've never knit any patterns by TwinKnits. I don't know if any of you have. What did you think? Are the patterns clear? They do have some really stunning pieces, so maybe designers that I want to check out a little bit more. So that brings me to the end of my fall knitting plans. I think with every season, I'm getting a lot more mindful about the types of items that I really want to knit, what's missing in my wardrobe, what I also enjoy making, and I have found doing those look back review videos have really helped me spot common trends of what I end up enjoying and what I don't. So I think every season I'm getting happier and happier with what I'm actually making, which is really positive to see, because if you're going to spend all that time knitting something, you should enjoy it in the end. And I'm also finding it really reassuring that I see the same items come up again and again on my list. So if I don't get to them one season, they do pop back up and make an appearance in future seasons. So also I think there's some consistency there in the things that I'm really leaning toward. It shows that there's really a place for these items in my wardrobe if and when I eventually get to knitting them. Hopefully maybe there'll be some additional inspiration in future videos, but chances are you might see some of these items again. You will notice accessories were very clearly missing from this list. It's not that I don't intend to knit any accessories, but I don't really like planning them. It's kind of an item for me where I'm like, okay, I want a small project. What do I want to cast on? I know I'll make the penny gloves this year because I have yarn for them. I do also have some sock yarn I didn't use last year, so maybe I will attempt socks. We'll see. I also have some yarn for a very basic shawl. These are all things that I will probably get to, but they're also not things that are necessarily like inspiring for me. They're just more knits to have on the go, small things that I can finish and feel satisfied by. Unless something like really catches my eye and I'm really, really excited about it, I think I won't really be including a ton of accessories here. And based on all the patterns I've mentioned here today and the categories I'm thinking of, if there's any patterns that you have spotted out in the wild that you think I've missed that I should really consider, please let me know. I love finding new designs. Let's just keep adding to the list and putting more and more in my queue. Why not? If you want to support my channel, it would mean a lot to me if you like this video and also leave a comment. It really helps my channel grow. I have also decided to add a Ravelry wish list, so if you would like to support me in a bigger way and gift me one of the patterns that's on my list, I would really appreciate it. But of course, by no means do I expect it. That's just if you would like to support in a bigger way than liking and commenting. And of course, as always, please don't forget to subscribe and turn on bell notifications. I do post new podcast episodes every 2 to 3 weeks, so that's where you'll be able to see the progress of my fall knitting plans. But also I do sprinkle in additional content like this from time to time throughout the month. Hopefully my fall plans have inspired you and you want to stick around. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.